So I want to jump from these disruptive customers to, what do the offerings need to look like in order to be successful in the future of the enterprise that these customers are driving. There are three areas that I want to look at in terms of disruption in offerings for the enterprise that we're seeing right now. One is a disruption in what the offerings actually look like. Secondly, a disruption in how the offerings and the solutions are being developed and by whom they're being developed and in what order of magnitude, what volume are they being developed in the model for that. And then the third thing is where we look for the new innovations in technology that will be at the foundation of this next generation of offerings for the enterprise. So let's look at this whole disruption in what offerings will look like. Now, David talked about mashups. And so that is really what I want to talk about here. It's beyond services, of course. It's really about vendors in hardware, in software, in services, looking at their offerings and thinking creatively about how can we borrow delivery models from other sectors and mix and mash them up in ways that deliver to that list that we just heard about, to make offerings lower cost, to make them more grooved toward the business need, to make them simpler to use, and using fresher technology. So I want to talk about share three examples of big mashups that are coming in and dive in just a little bit. We're going to hear more about them later today, but I want to share a couple of observations about them. So let's look at three. So one is, pick one from column A and, one or two from column B, and you get the idea. So first one we want to look at is software as a service. All right, so there's been a lot of buzz about this, certainly for a few years now, and it's really about software vendors adopting an online services delivery model in order to lower their costs, get greater operating leverage, and ultimately be able to profitably reach into that down market, into the SMB long tail, the ability to drive those offerings down. And really two things I want to talk about in this. One is what we're seeing on the supplier side, and that is we're seeing a lot, in 2007, a lot of buzz turning into a tremendous amount of activity and action and commitment. So we think 2007 will be a tipping point, and here are a few examples of what we have already predicted in IDC Predictions that we will see. That IBM, which has done very little in software as a service, will, we believe, this year or early next year actually make the leap and create an online marketplace. We'll see Microsoft and SAP that last year made their first big leaps into the pool of software as a service. This year, they'll ratchet it up. SAP, for example, will announce a whole new application suite, guess what, for small and medium business, and it will only be available as software as a service, so only online delivery. We think that there'll be enough vendors out there who need to jumpstart their software as a service offering, because that is the new delivery model, not only, as I said, to reach the SMB market, but also for the future of the large enterprise, that Salesforce.com will look like a very juicy target for some of these. Now, you may not be thinking of the vendors I'm thinking about, not necessarily traditional IT vendors. I imagine a Google or Yahoo could be very interested in buying a Salesforce.com as a way for them to move upstream from their consumer largely world up into the enterprise, the SMB world. And then, of course, tons of startups in this space and a lot of traditional software vendors moving there. So a lot of action and commitment on the software side, a real tipping point. Now, on the customer side, we're also seeing growing interest. And one thing that I find interesting is the result of a survey we did recently where we asked line of business executives and CIOs what they thought of this online delivery model for software, this mashup. And let me show you what they said. We asked them, do they support and do they believe they would be interested in using this type of model? Up on the top, you see the line of business. The lower one's the CIO. Look at the difference. Okay, well, CIOs a little bit over 50%, but about 2/3 of line of business executives say they're interested in it. Now, this is classic Clayton Christensen disruptive innovation. The experts in the market, the CIOs, focus on the deficiencies of the new model. That's not good enough. whereas everybody else focuses on the possibilities. And so we believe, again, this is an example where focusing on that disruptive customer perspective really gives you the clue of where the offerings are going to need to be. Now, a second mashup example is, in fact, the flip side of software as a service. It's services as software. And that's really services companies using software delivery and software platforms as a way to get greater leverage for themselves so they can get greater distribution into the down market area. And so two things that we're seeing there are companies in the BPO space, business process outsourcing, and IT services vendors who are putting their intellectual property into software. They're taking all the brains, the know-how that's between the ears of their smart people, and they're putting as much of that into software solutions as they possibly can. So, these vendors like Accenture, IBM, CSC, many others are spending tens and hundreds of millions of dollars right now, each year, in codifying some of that intellectual property, turning it into software. The second thing that we're seeing is, it's not surprising, given what the software vendors are doing, those services vendors are saying, well, how am I going to distribute these services that have software as part of their delivery? I'm going to use online delivery. So software as a service as a part of my service delivery. So you're seeing companies like ADP buying employees or Accenture buying Civista. So software as a service platform vendors. So a lot of movement, a lot of change in this and transformation in the services industry, adopting the software delivery model. So what does it mean really? I don't think it means services vendors are going to become software vendors or vice versa. I think what it means is, there's a great opportunity, and we're already seeing this, as each of these sides borrow the other's delivery model to get better penetration into the market, they'll also be looking at each other to partner for more opportunities to deliver these services that are online, that are software-based. Now, the third mashup I just wanted to give an example of is on the hardware side. So what else? Software as a service, services as software. Here's hardware as software and services. And so the best example of that we're seeing right now is this explosion of appliances, which, of course, these are just hardware with narrow function software packaged together and around a lot of different needs. Not just the under the covers, traditional under the IT covers things like security. We've seen those for years, or network appliances. But we're also seeing in the areas that are closer to the business. So business intelligence and analysis, the area of search. And the thing I find intriguing, the delivery to the market of a CRM appliance. So we're getting into the business application side of things. Now, some people may say, Frank, haven't we been here before? Appliances, like 10 years ago, we had a flood of appliances, remember, and they were kind of flops. So what's the difference? What is the difference now? And the difference is the context now is not just about marrying hardware and software together, but it is also tying in the services. So it's not just throw the box out there and forget it. It's about connect it to the internet and have it tied to a service provider, and that's an annuity, and that is an ongoing relationship. So the context is, an appliance outside of software and services is going to be a flop again, but an appliance with software and services is going to be a winner. And so we're seeing a lot of opportunities, as we saw in the other space, for partnerships between the equipment manufacturers and software and services vendors. So you get the idea. The common two threads between these three types of mashups, and there are many other types of mashups going on right now, is that it takes all of us out of our comfort zones. Software as services, services as software, hardware as software and services. We're playing the game with other people's rules. That's a bit of an adjustment. But the second thread is, it's clear from what we're seeing in the marketplace, these are becoming mandatory. These mashups are becoming mandatory, important parts of our offering portfolio for the future.